The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. On behalf of the Water Security Group on LinkedIn and Whitewater, I want to thank you for spending your morning, afternoon, or evening with us. I hope you find this educational presentation highly relevant, thought-provoking, and helpful in your professional pursuits. The goal of this webinar is to raise awareness, share our experiences, and further discussion on emergency preparedness and remediation strategies. I'm excited to introduce you to our two speakers today, Jim Wollbrinck, the Emergency Preparedness Specialist at San Jose Water Company, and as a late addition, stepping in for Shmulik Bakerman, who had a medical emergency preventing him from being here, Alex Miller, who handled disaster remediation for the Israeli market for Whitewater. This webinar is planned to run 45 minutes, and I ask that you understand if there's a slight latency or lag in the audio-visual, so we'll do our best to speak as slowly and articulately as possible. Once I'm finished with the introduction, I'll pass the presentation and viewing window to Jim, who will be speaking for roughly 23 minutes, after which I will pass the screen and microphone to Alex for another 10. The final 10 will be a question and answer session. I ask that all of you write your questions in the relevant text box in the control panel at the right of your screen, which I will receive throughout the presentation. At the end of the presentation, I'll be directing as many questions as possible to the relevant speaker. And now, Jim Wollbrinck.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And again, as Noah said, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are around the globe. We're going to cover two areas in my presentation. The first is a water contamination exercise that we conducted in 2007 that we were starting off as a functional exercise, but eventually developed into a full-scale exercise. The second presentation will be on the work that resulted from the Hurricane Katrina incident and the work that we've done in California on emergency potable water and potable water planning for emergency situations of all various types, both local and statewide. The first thing to kind of introduce and take a look at how San Jose Water Company handles emergencies is what are our critical priorities. And for us, first and foremost, is life safety with our employees, and then the community that we serve. So we have to have our employees prepared, have their families prepared. We've established a personal preparedness document that each employee gets on their arrival at San Jose Water, and we want them to have their families prepared so that when the incident happens, they're able to come in and help us get the system back up and running. Damage assessment and assessing the system is our first priority after an event. We've enlisted some of the ham radio community in one small area that we're testing the ability for them to take packets that have information on a particular station or a creek crossing or a vital location. And when the incident happens, they tear open that packet, take the information, go out, check that location, and then report back to the city EOC, which reports back to the San Jose Water Company EOC what they've found. What that will allow us to do is to get more boots on the ground, get more sight on these locations, and get it reported back. In some cases, we're looking at before we even have people in our EOC, information will be coming in. And then we want to coordinate our response, both internal and external. And what I mean by internal, San Jose Water Company uses outside contractors for most of our capital improvement work, our large main jobs and tank jobs. We want to make sure that we're coordinating with that staff when the emergency happens, because they're going to be coming in and assisting us with restoration. And then when we're looking at the restoration, how do we get our coordination with the local and regional affected areas? So for instance, if a hospital is affected outside of San Jose Water Company's service area, we probably want to make sure that we're getting that facility up and running before some of our our own facilities. And so how do we coordinate that in a regional and in what's called the operational area, which is the county that, that we're in. And then the stakeholders that we're looking at, critical infrastructure, we want to coordinate with critical infrastructure, meaning that San Jose Water Company as the main water provider for our county, we want to make sure that we have telecommunications and power to the locations that we need to provide water. That means we have to coordinate with these other entities, and we're in the process of looking at establishing a critical infrastructure EOC someplace within our jurisdiction that we can bring all of these critical infrastructure companies together, and when the event happens, we're in cooperation with our county EOC, and therefore it's a coordinated approach to responding to a disaster. And then another piece that we do is we assist the county with coordination of emergency potable water supplies, and we'll discuss that a little bit further in the presentation. So looking at our full-scale exercise, we started off, as I said, with trying to do a functional exercise, but in contacting our local hazmat teams, they liked the idea so much that they wanted to test out some of their equipment and so forth and do a full scale. So we ramped it up to a full scale exercise. We were also taking a look at possibly doing a recovery phase of the exercise. So for instance, the contamination hits the system, we detect it, we then respond. Now we have to recover and remediate the level of contaminant, get it out of the system and get it back up to working order. The problem with that was it was going to be such a huge undertaking that it was going to be a multi-day exercise, and we just could not afford to spend that much time. So we ramped it back and decided, let's just do the response phase of it, and we'll do the remediation and recovery phase later on. And you can see here there's an extensive list of participants. I show 6 water companies. That means that there were 6 water companies outside the area, so it ended up being almost a statewide exercise. We had 4 utilities from the LA Basin area that helped with planning and came up and observed and also acted as not only observers, but they assisted people out at the various locations. The FBI was involved because this becomes a terrorist type of event, and they wanted to test their response and coordination with local law. So we get into the planning of this event. We started over a year in advance, and there were several trainings, several tabletop exercises. We wanted to make sure that those that were participating had a chance to get the training and some of the experience working with equipment and so forth that they needed to be able to make it a viable exercise. We found that the scope was so big that we ended up meeting over the phone every 2 weeks to make sure that everyone was on task. And because there were so many groups involved, we wanted to make sure that we didn't fall short in any one of the particular areas. So you can see that we moved through the planning over the course of a year, and we wanted to make sure that we had